Welcome. You've splash landed into this Prosecco-laden podcast, straight into the woo-woo pool with the crew of Ohm-g. We're just a simple group of tragically imperfect and highly empathic BFFs, exploring a wide range of atypical topics with humor, grace, and curiosity. This is Ohm-g. Welcome, everyone. I don't quite know what to say about today's topic, mainly because I don't know what it is. It's Lynn's choice. She's going to surprise us. You're here with the crew.
Ohm-g, the podcast.
This is Camille.
This is Chandra.
This is Brenda.
And this is Lynn. Hello, everyone.
Mm-hmm.
As the crew looks at me
With fear and
with
terror.
fear in their eyes.
And bated breath.
Trepidation.
So today's episode, I don't even know how to start it, even though I've got like 10 pages of notes. Okay, so no community is immune to producing trauma because people, they be peopling.
Mm-hmm.
We have absolutely roasted religion on our podcast, but religion or Christianity, it isn't the only trauma-inducing community. There's trauma in the spiritual community too. So today, I want to talk about this as we are building our own community. I want to talk about what to look for and what to look out for when you are looking for your community or looking for your tribe. Now, I want to start with one thing because a while back, two someones who I adore, shared a horrifying story with me about something that happened to them, not in our community, but within a different community. And this is what gave me the idea for this topic. And without saying too much, because, it ain't my story to tell, I will just say that these two beautiful souls were led to an extremely vulnerable place and by their teacher, and they were verbally attacked while they were in that vulnerable space. And it was mortifying to them, and they didn't have any other choice but to leave that community. So obviously, if anyone who calls themselves a leader, a reader, a teacher attacks you verbally, run, get out, because they shouldn't be doing that. So instead, you need to look for a community who is understanding and that don't attack you.
That encourages you.
Yes, and one that encourages you. Even if your path is slightly different than their path, it's someone that respects your path.
Mm-hmm.
Because from what I understand, the attack happened because she didn't agree with what they believed. Was my understanding. And so that's why I think we need to talk about what to look for and what to look out for when you're looking for your community.
Personally, if they don't get my dark sense of humor, they're not for me.
Well,
We love that about you, Camille.
same.
Same.
So, I can keep going. I got like 10 pages of notes.
Well, a lot of what you said totally resonates with me because I've seen it come the opposite way of people roasting the person that I consider my mentor because what she was teaching didn't perfectly align with something else they had been taught or something that they believed at the moment, and they weren't open to curiosity about, yes, I'm still going to believe this, but is there something else out there about it?
This and that can be true
at the same time.
Exactly.
Right. They weren't open to the curiosity. So I've also seen it happen coming from the opposite direction.
Oh, absolutely.
I do want to say, I just feel Gemini over here, like I can see both sides at the same time, unfortunately. I do want to say feeling attacked is not a good community that supports you is going to trigger you. That's
a good point.
The mirror, they're mirroring something, and eventually something's going to come up that's going to trigger you because you're seeing something obviously in that community that is part of you, but it might be a part that you're rejecting of yourself.
And could we grow without being triggered?
Right. And I feel like that's part of what we're trying to grow, is being part of a healthy community, is where you can be triggered and you can say, hey, that triggered me. But being curiosity, because we've talked about this 100 times too, of like, I'm just triggered, and not judging the fact that you're triggered or judging the person that triggered you, but saying that triggered me. What can I learn from it? Like, why did that bother me the way it bothered me? Because 99% of the other time that I've been with this community, they've been supportive, uplifting, loving. I felt right at home. So this one thing can't have just negated all that. Like, something else has to be going on, right?
I think you're describing the crux of shadow work right now.
Right. But like you said, when somebody is completely attacking and belittling something that you hold strongly to, that's not what, I mean, that's what we're talking about here, not the fact that you're in a community, a loving community, and something happens that triggers you. That's a path for you. And probably the shadow work of the entire group, if we're being honest. Because you're probably not the only one that felt that if it came up in the group, because community is a shared energy.
Right. Well, and that's a great lead in, because I've been attacked in the spiritual community. Like, I had someone that blatantly attacked me out of the blue. And when I confronted them about it, they had nothing to say.
Right.
And so that just tells you that that was on them. So you just have to look out for stuff like that.
And I think too, in my opinion, don't look up to anybody as a spiritual like guru, or know that this person knows everything or does everything right, because everybody is having the human experience.
Right.
And nobody is perfect. I know that's a shock for all of you listening, that I'm not perfect, but it's happened once or twice. Just kidding. It's happened lots of times. But I think that's also important, because I know when a lot of people come into this community and they see that this person is doing something that they admire or that they want to do, you almost have the tendency to put somebody on a pedestal. And just because they can do that doesn't mean that they're any better than you are.
100%.
It's just they've tapped into that. And maybe you tap in a different way, or you have a different gift or a different skill, or you read energy in a different way. So don't put anybody above you.
Right.
Even if maybe they've had a little bit more experience, they're still the same.
They're still
human. Yeah.
But we've all been programmed to look for that authority outside of ourselves, to look to that person that knows more, does more, is more connected, when in reality, we're all equal.
Right.
Whether we're on the physical plane or whether we're not, like, we're equal with our guides. We're equal with the angels. We're equal. We're all souls in a form, whether it's in a celestial form, whether it's in an energetic form, whether it's in a human form, we're all equal.
Exactly.
So a lot of that trauma causing stuff comes from the fact that I feel inferior, therefore I'm going to project on you, or I've done all this work, so I'm letting my ego get in the way and I feel superior, therefore I'm going to poo-poo on you.
Right.
To make myself feel even more superior.
And I've found myself putting people on pedestals a lot, actually, because I look up to a lot of different people. But when I've talked to them, I've realized, oh, they're just like me.
Right.
And so that's I do my best now not to put people like on a pedestal.
And it's so hard not to do that, because the ego is trained to look at things that way.
Because they're so, you look at them and you're like, oh, they're so spiritual and they know so many things. But honey, they put their pants on just like I put mine on.
And have their doubts and their fears and their
100%.
nervousness. Absolutely.
They wake up from that same effed up dream and go, am I losing my mind?
Exactly.
It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Preach.
Exactly.
Sister Chandra.
Yes.
It kind of makes me think on a much smaller scale, as everyone in this room knows what it's like to be a confused little teenage girl. And maybe you have a crush on this guy, and maybe you talk to this guy and he kind of sees something in you that no one else has. And therefore he becomes more and more attractive because, oh my gosh, somebody gets me.
Yeah.
And then you start assigning potential and assigning characteristics and elevating and putting him on a pedestal, which can often lead to your downfall, as we know. Same thing on a larger scale with a guru, so to speak.
Yep. 100%.
Well, and that's why I try to be so careful when I talk about Whitney and call her a mentor, only because I say mentor in the fact of she opened my eyes to a lot of things. I feel like there are some areas where, and I'm not saying by any stretch that I'm better than her, but I feel like there are some areas where I feel like my learning has taken a different direction than necessarily I would see her teaching go. And I'm not saying she's right or I'm right or she's wrong or I'm wrong, but they're just a divergent path. But that's why I call her my mentor, is I wouldn't be where I am had she not started the ball rolling. And I mean, I started as a client of hers, not even a student, but she triggered something, even just that reading triggered something in me, triggered her curiosity that kept me coming back to her as a, I guess the right word would be valued.
Touchstone.
Yes, a visionary. Like she had a perspective that I wanted to learn more about that perspective. Not that I felt like she was, that's why, you know, like, I guess I just want to be clear when I say the word mentor, what I mean.
A springboard, not a superhero.
Right. Yes.
I feel exactly the same. She opened my eyes to all kinds of stuff. But I can also say this about every woman I'm looking at right here in this room.
Same exact words. Exactly.
Yeah. And now I have a little note written here about gatekeeping because that drives me nuts. I do not like gatekeeping. If you don't know what gatekeeping is, it's when someone demands that you follow their way of thinking or believing. So if you are looking for a community and someone continues to tell you this is the right way, this is the only way, you need to back off of that and go look instead for someone who will encourage you to do what feels authentic to you.
Church. Excuse me.
Everybody just had their ears blasted out.
And that's my next topic. Kinda.
Well, because a lot of us, when we get to a certain place in our awakening, realize that, especially the human experience, we all a lot of us have had a very similar childhood upbringing, but it's created different lenses, right? We may have had a very similar experience, but it's created one thing in me to heal, and it may have created something completely different in Lynn to heal in this experience, in this lifetime. And we're all looking at the stuff through our own lens.
Right.
So we can be looking at the exact same thing, but see it very differently and have a very different visceral experience to it. And that's why the whole gatekeeping thing also makes my skin crawl, is because you're not paying homage to that person. You're saying my experience is the only one that's legitimate.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that has been coming up so much for me in the past week, of our perception, how we filter everything through our own experiences, our own lenses, our own perception, and that creates our reality. And for us to think that our perception or our reality is the only reality also is then you're not allowing somebody else to have their own reality, or even trying to understand how it could be different for somebody else. So I think that's another
Or how
thing.
looking at their experience through their lens might actually be healing for you.
Yeah.
God forbid.
And what if your belief can coexist, your reality can coexist with their reality? It could both be happening.
Right.
Just because you don't believe it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen.
True.
For someone else. I mean, you believing it, you not believing it can be completely legitimate.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it's...
And it can happen for you.
Right.
Still their truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
If only for that day.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's probably, just sitting here with the four of us, and there's probably things that you all believe that I don't believe, but that's okay with me, because that's who you are. It's your authentic self. And so I think you can coexist with that, with others that might have a slightly different belief, but you can't let people keep your gate for you.
Right.
No. Well, but as we've all learned, especially in this past 6 months with Joanna, a lot of that comes from letting it come to you with the spirit of curiosity rather than the spirit of judgment, which is super hard.
Yeah, it is.
But allowing someone to believe something different and it being okay, you have to take the judgment out of it. And we're so quick to especially judge ourselves, but also judge a belief because it's not something we've experienced yet. And therefore,
Right.
how can that be, how can that be possible?
I never believed I could have an attachment. And then giddy up, it happened. So I think you have to.
But now you have a different perspective and a different lens to
hear.
Right.
Right. So I think it's like, I don't know. The whole perception thing is so interesting because I'm going through that on a personal level as well, like other people's perceptions. And it really does, like, it hits at the ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you don't know everything. That person thinks it's real. And so you have to let them.
You have to let them believe whatever they want to believe and not let it affect what you believe.
Their journey, your journey.
Exactly.
Their path,
right.
your path.
Exactly.
And what were you going to bring up about?
Well, I was going to draw a parallel with the religion thing because my dad, who we've talked about many times before, and bless his heart, I was talking about him with a friend of mine last night as we sat in my little sitting room, and there was a crash in the kitchen, and we both looked at each other, got up, and went in there. There was nothing. So I was like, oh, okay, he's crashing stuff in my living room or kitchen. But anyway.
He's like, don't be talking about me.
Exactly. Or just letting me know he was there.
Yeah.
So my dad was an ordained preacher, but he never went to seminary and he never took theology. Like, he did nothing other than have a Bible and a bunch of books that he opened up.
And opinions.
He came to his own interpretation, and his interpretation was right and everybody else's was wrong.
Yeah.
The patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so for me, like, I think if you're looking for a community, you better look for somebody that's had some,
Well, but I can draw that parallel back into the spirituality is because as humans, we speak a different language than spirit, right? So spirit has to come to us through symbols and things that we have to interpret into human consumables, right? For lack of a better word. And sometimes we go into meditation and we see these fantastical things. Then we have to come back and put it into words to describe it to other people.
Right.
Well, that's forming an opinion because that was my perception and how I would explain what I saw.
Yeah.
What the problem comes in when I say that my interpretation
is right,
becomes the only one.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because you and I have both had a very similar experience where we went into a place where we saw what we would call consciousness or a viewpoint, not saying that we saw source, but a viewpoint of source.
Yes.
Of collective consciousness. You saw it more like scales on a fish. I saw it more like points of light.
Right.
But I feel like we were seeing I'm not saying we saw the same thing, but I feel like we were seeing a very similar concept, or we were shown a facet of a very similar concept, but we both saw something that made sense to us.
Right. But going back to, like, my dad, his interpretation was the only interpretation that was right.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, like, if you're looking for your community, if you got somebody that will, it's the gatekeeping thing again, like, they can't tell you that what you saw is wrong, because just like we saw consciousness, we saw it in a way that made sense to us.
And as you're telling the story, I can run parallels to what I experienced and go, oh, I feel like that was two very similar, I'm not saying we had the same experience, but two very similar experiences, rather than go, she didn't see it like I saw it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And maybe what you saw was much closer, and maybe I had a lesser understanding, and I could only see it as points of light. Maybe you saw more detail than I did. Who knows? I don't know.
Who knows? But it was for me.
Right.
Right. And
it created that visceral reaction that you needed.
Exactly. And so I just think when you're looking for a community, look for someone who will encourage you to, what's the words I'm looking for?
Your own individuality of your experience.
Yes.
Validate that rather than negate it.
Yes. Yes.
And they're fine with you holding your own opinion, even if it's the polar opposite of their own.
Absolutely.
There was a person, I don't know if I would call her a life coach necessarily, just a wise person many years ago, who said, if you're having trouble understanding someone's point of view and you're in discussion, sometimes the best thing you can say is, interesting, tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
And then be quiet and just listen. And pretty soon you're going to have your answer. And it might not be what you're looking for, but it also might open your eyes to a different point of view. We're all limited by our own beliefs and experiences and how much we're willing to grow and change.
That is 100%
Sometimes
true.
a lot, sometimes nope, I'm going to be in this rut for a while. Be patient.
Well, but that question will give the other person an opportunity to give you the information that's going to get you to the point where you get a gut feeling. You're either fully going to resonate more with what they're saying, or you're going to get that feeling of like, okay, these are not my people. This is not where I'm supposed to be, and maybe steer you on to where you do need to be. But it gives you an opportunity to get that clarity.
And hopefully you can walk away with empathy if it's a red flag situation, or open your arms if it's a green flag situation.
Yep. Anybody else got anything to say before I start reading my notes again?
You go for it, girl.
Go.
Well, I just would encourage everybody to look for a strongly supportive community and one who encourages you to follow your own path. A community who resides in not only love and light, but also understands that darkness is within all of us.
Preach.
That's just my point of view. So yesterday I did a video on Instagram, and it was so funny because when I did it, after I finished, I was like, oh, that's what they're talking about. I pulled the card of integrity. And at the end of my notes, it literally says, look for a community who is operating from a place of high integrity. Because as Ari DeFranco, do y'all know who she is? She did a song. I think the name of the song is IQ, but in the song it says, every tool is a weapon if you hold it right. And I was like, oh,
Mic drop minute.
Speaking. Yeah. Yeah. So anybody else?
That's interesting. Yeah, I think as we are, like, y'all know, I got a passion for creating this community that we're building in our area, and then, you know, globally as well with our friends in other countries and states and places.
We wouldn't be sitting in this room if you didn't have that passion.
No.
Yep.
And it's like, y'all, that's not the dog, that's my stomach.
Brenda needs
it's quarter to snack time up in here.
Oh, I am hungry. I haven't eaten anything yet today. But you're not going to resonate with every single person. But also at the same time, even if you don't resonate with their truth, being able to hold space in love and compassion, I think is so important. Because like Lynn said, people can be just as burned by the spiritual community as by the religious community. So even if someone might rub you a little bit the wrong way, it's almost like still staying in a place of compassion and kindness. And that can be real challenging because our judgments want to get in the way, and our own filters, our own perceptions of what we think somebody is like or how they project themselves. There's just, I don't know.
Well, our own traumas.
Yeah.
Because we project onto other people our own fears, and we're looking and we're waiting for that shoe to drop sometimes. So sometimes we can even like hurt our own feelings that way, especially in a spiritual community where you have people who are trying to be more vulnerable, trying to be more raw, trying to be more authentic. It just brings a lot of that up to the surface.
Yeah. It holds up mirrors for us to see ourselves too, and to learn and grow, I think.
And to act from a place of integrity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Integrity.
That's right.
It's a heavy subject, actually.
It is. I thought it was quite a heavy subject, but one that needed to be talked about, especially because we've been building such this beautiful community and hearing some stories from those, people that talk about how they were harmed. And I was in another spiritual community years ago, and I left that like my feet were on fire because of them trying to place on me their beliefs. And I was like, I don't actually necessarily believe that, and being shunned because I spoke up.
Right. Rather than them saying, it's fine that you don't believe it.
Right.
Maybe just sit and watch and see if it resonates rather than we're right, you're wrong.
Right.
Because then you could have maybe been shown something that maybe would have shifted some of your beliefs. Maybe, maybe not. But if not, then you would have had the opportunity to kind of walk away in grace rather than
Right.
it creating a tension.
Yeah, but
in the
trying to have a
community.
conversation
Right.
with some of those people proved to be
Yeah. They weren't
Mm-mm.
budging.
They weren't budging.
And I was re-listening to a reading that I had done recently, and we were talking about vibration. And I'm not saying that we're doing it right. I mean, I'm not saying
Right.
that everything that we're doing is perfect.
Right.
But one thing I can say is that when you get your vibration right and you do what you do from the best possible place you can be in that moment, you attract in, like, I feel like everybody that we've attracted in is vibrationally, maybe not in the same place, but aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the ego part of me, I can't help but look at that with a sense of pride, is like, that's because we've done the work to know ourselves and we're calling in the people that we know we can support and that are going to support us.
Yes. You know, I think that brings up another good point, is if the people in your community or the people that are running the community, if they're not willing to do the work on themselves,
That's a red flag for you too.
Should be a red flag, because we do work on ourselves all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we're perfect, but for me, and I can only speak for myself, if there's something that someone has a problem with me, I want them to come talk to me about it, because I want to sit down and have the conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can only learn if you talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Our friendships have been shadow work, haven't they, friends?
yes, they have.
I love y'all.
Friends and family.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they're here for, the grand scheme of things, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly,
Divine mirrors.
it's just made me appreciate everybody more, because we stuck out sometimes that we could have all just been like, fuck this shit.
Yeah.
Peace out, y'all. Good luck with your life.
Right. Because you know what? It ain't all love and light.
Right.
We
gosh,
all
no.
have darkness and we all
Yeah.
have shadows.
And
You
we
know.
all have it come right back up every now and then. The,
Exactly.
the same ones.
And so we have to sit and look at that.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important part of being in a community, is to help each other,
Help each other grow.
grow.
Humble us every once in a while.
And
Well-
if you're ever in a relationship of any kind, whether it is familial, romantic, friendship, and it's nothing but love and light, you better check yourself.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yep.
Something ain't right. Somebody ain't telling the truth.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, folks.
Well, that was a
Fun one.
conversation.
Y'all
know.
y'all are looking quite stunned. I thought that was a great conversation.
It was. It flowed nicely.
And I'm
No.
going to have a snack. That's all I know. After
Brenda-
all that.
Brenda needs something to eat.
No, I felt like, I mean, all of our episodes are the bomb, but I feel like that was probably one of the more impassioned episodes we've had in quite a while. That was
Mhm.
wonderful, Lynn. Thank you for that.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Good
thanks for bringing
topic.
up that subject.
Brenda's belly needs a burger, y'all.
It's better than Brenda's beaver. Anyway,
Needs a barber.
we love you guys, and we're so glad that you're part of our community. Rate
Check
us.
out, check out our Instagram account
Instagram.
for upcoming events and
Yes.
stuff. We have virtual events that anyone can attend. We have live events here locally in the North Carolina area that you can attend in
Yep.
person. So keep your eye out. And if you're not part of us, come
Come join us.
be curious. and see
Yeah.
what- see
Join
what-
our community,
see
because
what's going on.
we are building a fantastic community.
Lovely people.
Yeah.
And love yourself, but check yourself. Peace out.
Yeah, exactly. Peace out, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a review. It's so easy to do and such a huge help for us. We appreciate your interactions so much. Want to join us at our table? Make sure to check out our YouTube channel and join our Facebook community. If you've enjoyed this content and wish to support us, take a look at our Patreon page. All information and links will be in our podcast description. Catch you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.